Welcome to Communication, Connection, Community, the Podcaster's Podcast. This podcast takes a deep dive into modern-day communication strategies in the podcasting space. We chat with interesting people who make the podcasting and speaking spaces exciting and vibrant. We also dive into the podcasting community with news, updates, latest trends and topics from this ever-evolving space. So strap in. It's going to be one amazing ride. Let's dive into today's episode. And our guest today is Tabatha Thorell, a native of rural Nebraska. She's a devoted wife and mother to 5 girls. With a career spanning 16 years, she began as a fitness coach, earning a reputation for motivation and persistence. Alongside her high school sweetheart, Tabitha has been a successful real estate investor for nearly 2 decades. Beyond fitness coaching, Tabitha is a best-selling co-author, speaker, life and business coach. She's also a podcaster. We'll find out more about the podcast in just a moment. Her diverse skill set and passion for helping others achieve their dreams have made her a sought-after mentor. Tabitha's podcast, What Went Wrong, is where she shares inspiring stories and insights and adds another dimension to her impactful presence. Tabitha, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Carl, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's always a pleasure talking to a fellow podcaster who's been in the trenches a little bit, has some shows, and you've also guested. We didn't mention this in the bio. You've guested so far. This is being recorded in June of 2023. At this point, you've guested on 53 shows already, right?
Yep. I think this might be 54. I'd have to go back and look. A couple shows I did dual episodes, so I just counted that as like an extra one, but we'll say at least 50, over 50 for sure, June. And by the end of this month, I think it'll be closer to 60.
All right. And also your own podcast, which you launched in January of this year, has how many episodes already?
25. And I think I've recorded close to 30 because I did 4 interviews yesterday.
Phenomenal. Congratulations. And by the way, I wasn't there when you launched. Welcome to the podcasting space. It's great to have you here. We're just one big happy family, basically.
Yeah, it's fun. I love it. I enjoy it a lot.
What brought you specifically to the podcast space? Of all the media that you could promote your message on, why did you start to embrace podcasting?
Well, in 2018, I started a podcast when I launched my first fitness business. And because I've been in the fitness industry for 16 years, but I was always working for somebody else. And so in 2018, I was like, okay, I got to do this. So I launched one because they say to launch a podcast, but I tried to do it all myself. And at the time I had 3 kids and I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I had a message, but trying to do it yourself, there was just too many irons in the fire. So I think I did 6 or 7 episodes and then didn't do it. But I kept thinking man, this is so good. And people kept telling me you have a voice for podcasting, and I was like, is that a way of saying that my face is ugly? I don't know. But it's you have the voice, but not the face. I don't know. And I always wanted to do more YouTube videos and stuff. But honestly, for the moms listening out there or the dads, it's you're being pulled all different directions. And we all know there's so many different platforms. And finally, one of my friends said, you're building all these connections with these people who are very successful. You need to have a place to invite them, to come and be a guest. And he's hinting you need a podcast. I'm like, I can't do it all. And he said, I had a friend. He's like, I have a friend who puts them together. You just do the episode. He does everything else. And I'm like, well, that I can do. So as long as the price point was okay, I was like, let me work with this guy. And he's amazing. If you guys want his information, reach out because he is awesome. He's the one who helped me with the title and we collaborated with everything, but it was just nice to have somebody who'd been in the space to be this is going to work or this isn't going to work. Or, it's we've been doing this 6 months. And of course, I'm a very results driven person. So I'm like, why aren't we at top of the charts? And why aren't we getting more downloads? And, all the things. And he's like, it's okay. It's slow, so he's there to kind of help keep me grounded in this, to keep it moving. And so I just birthed it out of that. And I always liked hearing stories of other people's perseverance. Some of my favorite books, Stickability, 3 Feet from Gold. I love those stories where people almost gave up and then didn't. And look where they are today. So I was like, well, that's perfect for a podcast, especially I feel this day and age, people really need hope. We have all the tactics and the tips and we have the motivational speeches. It's those stories really anchor in, I think, to help people get through a really hard time. So that was the birth of the podcast. And then I just set a goal at the beginning of the year that I wanted to be on 100 stages. I didn't care if it was podcasts, summits, in person, virtual, local church gatherings, like where I could get my message out there. And here's why, because for a long time, I was told that I was too loud, too strong, too opinionated. And so I kept my voice quiet for a really long time. And I said this year, I have a mission, I have a voice, like, let's go. And so that's where me being on a lot of different podcasts, which is just kind of an easier path for stages because I can't always travel with all the kids and stuff. And so I've just been blessed to meet really awesome people and get to be on their podcast and share experiences that have helped me. And hopefully it helps the audience. And so it's a win-win.
And Tabitha, that's it. We're out of time by now. No, I'm just kidding. That was a lot of information. I'm glad you shared that because there's so much there that I want to unbundle. Firstly, about your podcasting journey, but I also want to go back to something you said about. So I have a voice for podcasting. What do you mean I don't have the face? I spent 25 years in radio broadcasting, and it was the same thing. I jokingly said I have a face for radio, basically. So that actually did ring a memory there. So, but you're right about the podcasting journey. It's very easy when we first get into the space to do those first few episodes. I think you said for you it was 6 or 8, and you realize, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And I can the traction I wanted, it's too much work, and all these reasons why not to do one. And having somebody in your corner, which is what we do at Podcast Solutions Made Simple, is we help people like you, and obviously you've got someone already that's helping you not only launch their podcast but maintain it and give them hope, because we expect there's that expectation piece that, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a success overnight. All I have to do is put the podcast out there and I'll be that instant overnight success. So I'm glad that your person is helping you in saying it's a long game, not a short game. I don't know how many times I've had that conversation with prospects and other podcasters who say, I don't have the downloads I want. And it's a matter of, in some cases, lifting the hood and seeing maybe what needs a little bit of a tweak or a tune up. But the bigger piece is you got to be in the game a little bit before you actually get the traction that you want. So kudos for being here. I love that goal too of being on over 100 stages. And it sounds like you're well on your way. So congratulations on that part and being on the journey. I'm so blessed to have you here and just chatting about some of those things that people need a voice. People need that platform to give them the opportunity to share their messaging, not their messaging, but more their story.
Yeah.
Because the story is important. The information, the tips, the tricks that you said, there's tons of them out there. And if you don't believe us, just crack open your YouTube and look at all the tips and tricks for everything, right?
Yes.
But it's the story, the power of story. And how much story do you bring to your show?
So every person that comes on my show, I tell them straight up, I'm like, we go deep and hard on at least one part of your life, like one story. Most of the time we have several, but a lot of people have that one moment where it's like, I just interviewed a guy where he said he slept with a handgun on his pillow and he just prayed he had the courage to kill himself the next day. He went deep into the story. And by God's grace, he didn't have the courage, and he had the courage to stop drinking and turn his life around. And so I ask my audience, I say, go deep and go hard, as emotional as you can, and then tell us how you came out of it. And then if there's other stories or whatever you want to, go with that, pertain to that, then great. But it's all about story. And if they don't, which has only happened once in the 25 interviews or 29 interviews, is then I just tell them, like, I can't use that episode. Because my audience, as small as it is, they know, like, when they, open up my podcast, that someone's going to come in. They're not just about promoting their book the whole time or that one concept that they created, always just saying it all the time. It's like they go to the story. And yes, a lot of times people discover this awesome thing and they share that with the audience. But first we go and we get to know, like, and trust them because we're in that vulnerability with them. And so that's really what's unique. A lot of people get done with my podcast and they're like, man, that was like a therapy session. Like, I forgot, what I had to go through. Because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, especially if you're on the mountaintop right now, you don't forget what you went through, but you kind of forget the emotion. It's like childbirth for mothers. It's like, that it was painful, but you don't really remember the actual pain in it until, like, you go and, like, physically relive that. And so I ask people to go there. And if they're not willing, I never, force it, but I just say the more that our audience can know you and you can be vulnerable, first of all, you're going to get raving fans that love you and go to your stuff. And two, they can see themselves in your story, and that's what gets them out of hope. They're not going to remember you specifically with that. They're not going to think, oh, you were weak because you told me that. No, they're going to think the opposite. How powerful was Carl for telling us that story?
It's also interesting to listen to. I think, again, people have heard tips and tricks even before podcasts were around. We've been hearing tips and tricks on television, on radio, on whatever it is for 11 billion years, so it seems. One more tip and trick, and we'll turn into our own tip and trick. So, why not but why not focus on the story? And everyone comes from somewhere. Everyone has that story, that journey, that thing that makes them who they are. And thank goodness that, you're bringing it out, but thank goodness people are sharing the story before they, for example, pull the trigger. So that was a great story. And by the way, this is an audio only podcast, so you didn't see my facial expression when Tabitha shared that, but I was like, what?
Right. And you want to go listen to that episode, right? Like,
Absolutely.
You're like, I want to know this story. And that's the whole point. It's like, I want people to want to listen to it. Now, I love hacks and tips, and I love that. But when I'm listening to a podcast, I'll be honest, I'm on the treadmill, I'm folding laundry, I'm in the car. So I'll hear that and I'll be like, okay, I'll come back to that. And sometimes I do. But when I hear a story of somebody telling me that they persisted, or they sought out a mastermind, or they communicated better with their spouse, I didn't need them to tell me the 3 tips to success was persistence, mastermind, and communication. I gathered that from the story and actually anchored it in my brain better than if I would have been at home, like with a pencil and paper, looking at that. I'm going to remember, Carl's story or Jocelyn's story or whatever. I'm going to pull that and be like, man, I remember that point of it. And that's the whole purpose, because there's so many podcasts to listen to.
Yeah, for sure. And you can also say, if you feel the need to, depending on how you've structured or laid out your story, you might have to go back and say something like, what was the point of all this? Well, here's what it is. And just because sometimes we do need to be hit over the head.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Because to your point, we're doing other things. We're on the treadmill. We're cooking breakfast. We're doing so many other things that are consuming our time. We call it multitasking. There really is no such thing when you think about it, because our attention is focused elsewhere.
Crazy.
Exactly. It's going 90 miles a minute, but we don't, but at the end of the day, you're still getting that message out. So there's something I want to go back to that you mentioned, and it's the size of your audience. And I heard of a magical piece come out from a thought leader in the podcasting space who has been spending her last, 2, 3, 4 years helping people monetize their shows without sponsors or paid ads. And she said this magical piece of information about what she was sharing with people about her systems, her methodologies, and how she monetizes. She said, it doesn't matter the size of your audience. You can have an audience with 3,000 or 30,000, or you can have an audience with 30 or 20. It's the content, it's the messaging. And that's what we're talking about here, is the story and the communication strategies that really make all the difference in the world. And it makes a difference too in the space that you're working in real estate investing. So let's shift and talk about that a little bit, because I think the communication that is needed, I don't think everyone realizes or appreciates the amount or the clarity in communication that's so important, not only as a real estate investor, but when you get into the space in other capacities, how important it is.
Yeah. So it depends. When you're talking real estate investing, like my husband and I have always done it on a more of a passive way. Now, there's never anything truly passive. If you see people, it's a marketing tactic. I'll tell you right now, but there's definitely ways that you can be more hands off, because there's in the business of real estate, and then there's real estate investing, which is what we do. And there is a big differentiator there. And I don't think people necessarily understand that, but it's communicating what you want out of real estate. Like if it is a business, like I want to quit my job, I want to do something different. That's the business of real estate. That's like, you want to get in there. It's your hustle and grind every day, 8 to 10 hours. That's what it is. That is a little different. Okay. And there are some amazing coaches, leaders out there that can teach you how to do that. And what we do, you can use that to become the business of real estate, but you don't have to start there. So it's not so much pressure. So I say this because when you're talking about communication, you have to communicate to yourself what you want, and to your family. If you are a family entrepreneur, if you just have a wife that you're a family, you have to communicate why you're doing this and what you're doing it for. because you're talking about investing money. I don't care if that was $5 or $500,000. It's money, and we're all emotionally tied to money. And if you do not communicate to your spouse, to your kids, why you're doing it, they're never going to see the vision. And they're always going to say that was one more thing that took dad away, or that was one more thing that took mom and dad away from us or our relationship. But if you communicate to your kids, hey, we're going to get this property and people pay us to live in our house, and then we get to use that money for Disney World, or we get to use that money for a new car or this thing, whatever. Never tell your kids for a savings account, because that's boring. Okay, I'm just going to be honest. And yes, you need to have enough savings for like 6 months, but then beyond that, say, we're using this to build a better life for it. You have to communicate why you're doing it, because kids are smart and they're intuitive. And your spouse is smart and they're intuitive. And if you do not include them on the process and you just say, oh, it's just this thing, I'm doing, they're going to feel left out and they're not going to want anything to do with it. And even if you create that wealth, you're never going to be able to keep it, because they want nothing to do with it, because you didn't communicate why you were doing what you were doing.
There's such an emotional attachment to money, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I know in communicating with my spouse, not that we've done a ton of real estate investing at this point, we're still in our early stages of the journey, but even saying the words, hey, I'm in this real estate program, which, by the way, I have a colleague who's also a client who does a real estate investing podcast. It's actually not just real estate investing, but anyways, he has a podcast. So I'm in his program. And when I said, hey, I'm doing this program and it's also about mindset, because it is about mindset, right? Because you have to look at it differently.
Yep.
The automatic, some of the earlier discussions were about dollars and cents and, thinking that we're going to be going and buying these $1 million, $2, $3, $4 million 80 unit apartment buildings instantaneously. Yep. It's like, no, it's understanding the journey, the process, and being able to communicate that. Now, luckily we don't have any children, but I can imagine how that communication has to be even different when you're saying, hey kids, the reason we're doing this is, and I'm glad how you structure that. It's not, yes, okay, it might be for the savings account in the short term, but it means quality of life. But kids don't understand that. Kids don't understand quality of life. But if you say, so we can go to Disneyland or Disney World or whatever, your favorite theme park or wherever it is in the world this summer or next year or for your 10th birthday or whatever it is, all of a sudden, that anchors things differently for people. And I think it's anchoring people or giving them that touch point that really makes a difference. Yeah.
And you have to give kids something tangible now. So it could even be something as simple like, hey, we do this and we get to go have froyo every Thursday. I mean, like, it's something simple like that. It does not have to even be a Disney World trip. It can be, hey, I'm doing this so I can come home an hour earlier and we can play our favorite game or watch our favorite movie, or we get to go. For us, it was Disney World, but it was more than that. It was, we could go to Disney World without having to pack our own lunches. Because we would go to Disney World on a discount. It's called Disney World discount. And we would do that. We'd pack all our lunches. We'd have about 20 pounds worth of water and food on our backs. And we'd be hot and tired and irritated because we wanted the fun snacks that everybody else was having. And our kids, why can't we get the Mickey ice cream? And, and as parents, we want to give them that. We're like, oh, you don't need the Mickey ice cream.
You don't need the $400 ice cream.
No. And here's the thing. It's not even about the money. It's about the experience. And it's the emotion that it would take us, because we'd feel the pressure of the money. And so we step back. And again, because I know some people are going to be like, it's overpriced and it's entitlement. No, it was setting a goal ahead of time for our kids and saying, when we meet that goal, for my husband and I as well, we're going to go there and we are going to have pure joy. It's the emotional tie to it. And so everything, like when you're doing this, when you communicate it to your kid, they are so smart and they're so intuitive that they pick up on it. And we have a daughter that's almost 15, and we've been telling her and my second oldest, for at least 2 years now, we talk about, you can get a car or we can help you buy your first rental property, because we match what they make for their car, or we can invest it in an income property. And so we've been telling them that. And it kind of goes in one ear, out the other. She's seen her whole life what we do. But the other day she came to us and we were talking about money, and she's like, I don't want to talk about money. I don't want to talk about growing up. Like, I just want to be a kid. She was feeling this anxious about money. And I go, let's just talk about this for a second. And I went through the process. I said, what do you think it takes? So then I just asked her questions because as parents, we like to lecture. And I just asked her a question. I said, what do you think it takes to get a rental property? And she said, well, you have to work for a lot of time to get the money, like to get a lot of the money. And I said, what if you didn't have to? What if you walked in the bank with Daddy and I and you were able to get one? And she's like, oh. And then I said, and then what if we introduced you to our property manager and they were able to manage it and you were able to go to school? Do you think you could do that? And she was like, well, yeah. But she was making a mountain out of a molehill because we hadn't communicated in the right way for her to understand it. And that happens so much in real estate investing. People think that they can't invest in it because they don't have the money or they don't have the resources or the right house or the whatever. And that's just not true. And so it just was a light bulb moment for me is I have been telling her, quotation marks, because this isn't video, like telling her what to do instead of sitting back and what is she hearing? How am I really communicating this? And I know that she saw it. And so I think modeling is a good, I definitely think kids model what you see, that they see, but I was also not communicating to where she was receiving it. And then when I was, then she got excited. She was like, well, what do I have to do? I said, well, you have to come with me and we'll look for properties. And she's like, okay, I can do that. Like it was just that one little step, that one little bite. So like you might have listeners that want to buy their first income property and they're, you talked about your wife like, oh, you think you have to invest in the $3 million 80 unit. No, you don't. You don't have to start there. You start with the least path of resistance and then you take that first step, so communication and that understanding, it just goes hand in hand.
And understanding too that, by the way, thanks for giving me the air quotes. I appreciate the air quotes. They don't work the best in an audio only format, but you did mention them. But I think the other thing too, when we look at certain things, especially real estate, especially something that we don't have any perception of, or it's outside of our purview, we just don't see it yet because we can't just drop $10 million and go buy 3 100-plex units. No. We just can't do it. It's just, who has that kind of money? Because we automatically, and then we discredit ourselves and say, I'll never do that. It's not going to happen. Blah, blah, blah. So, but I like how you structured the journey or painted the picture for your daughter. And you said, well, what if we could help you do this? And what if we did this? And what if we did this? Because I think we look at something and say, it's too big. I've had people say that we are blessed to live in the Thousand Islands, just so we border with upstate New York, and there's a beautiful river. It's the St. Lawrence River. It's phenomenal. There are some really nice homes there. There's $1 million and $2 million and $3 million homes. People have, $400,000 yachts. And I've heard people say, oh, wouldn't it be great to own that? I'll never have enough money to own that. Not realizing that, the person that owns that $400,000 yacht probably didn't own it, probably wasn't their first boat. Probably had a few steps they had to take along their journey to get there, probably had to use various forms of communication with their spouse, with business partners, with whoever to get there as well. It just didn't happen, just like your podcast and your journey with your show. It didn't happen instantaneously. It wasn't a snap and you're an overnight success, but you're seeing the results and you're getting there one step at a time.
And that guy that owns that, he probably doesn't even own it, Like, let's be real with some of it, It's all perception as well.
Yeah, true. The bank might still own most of it. But I just wanted to point out, by the way, if you're hearing this podcast right now, did you hear what Tabitha, she's done it a couple times now, but did you hear how Tabitha, as I'm throwing questions at her, and I'm doing them conversationally, but Tabitha just isn't answering the question. She's giving an example, and as she's giving an example, she's turning it into a story. How powerful is that? So thank you, Tabitha, for playing the home game. I appreciate that. Yeah, so you're actually not just drinking the Kool-Aid and saying, it's about story and then not telling stories. So I appreciate that. Along the journey of communication, though, you've said that there are not just the communication about the real estate, but even within, once you've purchased your property, there's certain types of communication period that if you just knew how to communicate with people, things would be so much different.
Yes.
Give us some examples of that.
So our dominant real estate investing is we own income properties, which means we buy a house, we do a little renovation to it, and people rent it out. Okay, so we do a lot of single family homes. We have some duplexes, quadplexes. That's kind of like our bread and butter. We're expanding now. We are looking at apartment units. We're looking at some storage units, some commercial stuff. But our bread and butter is taking a single family home and turning it into rental property for a family, or we do a lot of college students. The thing with that is you have, especially when we do college students, you have a lot of personalities of people who have not been mature in the world. They have not experienced the world very much. And when you know the personality types and you can communicate different things of authority and that, it really just helps. And let me explain here. When we have, say we have 4 girls live in our house and they're fresh out of the dorms and they've never lived in an apartment. When they come, they're so excited. They're, oh, we want to do this. And can we paint? And can we put this up? And we communicate to them what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. But I'm not going to come at them like, no, you can't do any of this stuff. And we express to them, we communicate to them, if you paint it this color, and there's no damage to the trim, by all means, but you can't paint it black or purple or whatever. And here's why. If you do that, then you have to repaint it before you go. We just communicate, because I feel like that harsh no, sometimes they want to rebel and they're still kids. They're 19, 20 years old. Change the paradigm. We have a single dad who has his kids every other weekend. And, he wants to do, this to this. And we just communicate that, the kids are welcome and that we can't have we can only have so many people in the house. This is why. And we just communicate to them. Again, we're emotional beings. If we just come at them and say like, no, you can't have this, or yes, you can have this, I feel like it just automatically, people, when anything goes wrong, they will call us. But when we communicate and have a really good understanding with our tenants, they have a problem and they find the solution. And then they might tell us afterwards, or, hey, if can we change out the doorknobs? We'll change it out. And just bill us what the doorknob costs, rather than, hey, can you come and do this right now in the middle of the night? They don't have that because we've communicated, we've built that connection with them. So that's kind of like on the tenant side. And then when you communicate to like a property manager of what your expectations are and what kind of landlord you want to be to your tenants, meaning they have to communicate to the tenants to your standard. Because my property management company is employed by me. Yes, they have certain things that they do. And we, again, communicate what those are because they have integrity, they have a business, but so do we. And as long as we can communicate that and come to an agreement, then you're going to have less friction when that comes to be. Because when stuff hits the fan, which it does, because it's a business, it's a house, it's this, when you've already communicated it, it defuses the situation.
Yeah, when things hit the fan, that's the last time to be thinking about, that's the worst time rather, to be thinking about, oh, maybe I should employ some communication skills here. No, you want to do that ahead of time. You don't want to have, 3 purple walls in the house and crayons etched in your walls to then go, or something broken or whatever. That could have been avoided to then go, oh, now I should maybe communicate with people about X, Y, and Z. So the communication piece is huge. And that's why, we do what we do as well. Yes. Okay. We help people not only launch their shows, but maintain them, but it's also the communication and helping our clients become better podcasters, which is what you're doing on top of the business. And plus you said, I want to talk about this because I just want to hear about some of the journey and some of the experiences that you've had so far, and maybe ones that are coming up that you might want to share about how you want to be on 100 stages this year. So you've already been on some because you said podcasts and summits, and that's so far come to fruition. What are some of the other stages that maybe you haven't been on that are coming?
I mean, I would love to be on more physical stages because I'm an energy person. I mean, like, I love to see the audience. I love, even when I give content, if I can give content, even to a Zoom room, like, I just love to see people's faces, energy, the crowd. And here's why, because I am there to serve. And if I don't pick up on what the audience needs, then it becomes about me, and then I get nervous. The only time I get nervous is when I think about, like, how am I performing? But when I'm in live and I can pick up on their energy, then it's just a servant attitude, and it just seems like it just flows through me. And so that's why I love to be on physical stages. I live in rural Nebraska. I mean, we have an airport an hour away from us, but a commercial airport that like actually goes to other places, like bigger places, without canceling flights, it's about 4 hours. So for me to get on a plane and go do even just like a 1-day live show, unless I'm being paid for it, that's time away from my kids. And that time, you can't put a price tag on that. And so it's, it has to be really special. It has to be, on point. But I do love the physical stages. So I'd love to get on more of those. And, just on a little bit bigger platform podcast, I don't discriminate right now. Like I go on where people need me. I'm not like, oh, you only have 30 views. Like I go and add value and give value because I said I'm putting in the reps. If I would have started with only the mentality, like I'm only going to go on podcasts that have so much, first of all, that's a me mentality. I'm here to serve and I need to get my message of communication out. You told me that I told stories. Well, that comes natural. I didn't even realize that. Like it's to the point where you just do it so much and it just becomes natural. Well, that's because I put the reps in. It's like weight loss. You don't just lose 50 pounds overnight, or you don't just get down to 15% body fat by going to the gym once or twice a week. No, you have to put the reps in. You have to go to see that progress. And so sometimes I get, I wish I had more visibility and I wish my business was growing, but I know what I'm doing is serving. And I know what I'm doing is perfecting my craft and my skill set. And there's a story in the Bible where it talks about a guy who wants this woman and he's willing to work for free for 7 years for her. And he does it and he goes to the father and the dad's like, I think you need to work for another 7. And he does it because he loves her. And so when you switch that story to business, are you willing to work? I'm not saying 7 years for free. You got to live, you got to eat, you got to support your family. But are you willing to do what it takes when it gets hard, when you don't necessarily see the results? Are you willing to pivot, reach out for help, change the things? I said I was going to get to 100 podcasts before I was selective, before I got really selective. I'm just going to put my reps in and then, maybe reach out more, maybe travel more because I have a 3 and 2-year-old. So as they get a little bit older and maybe are in school more, I'll be able to travel a little bit and stuff. But now it's really hard, even for them, for me to just work part-time. They want mom. My daughter said before I left today, I don't want, the nanny to come. Her name's Ashley. She's like, I don't want Ashley to come. And I said, why? She goes, because I just love you.
That's so sweet.
I know. And one of my older daughters said, well, do you even want to go to work now? And I go, well, no, but yes, because I've committed to this. I have to follow through. But it is hard as a mom. Like you want to be there. But this is my gifting. This brings me so much joy. And I finally found a peace with that of like working and being home. And I think it's really hard for women, especially, to find that balance. And so right now I'm able to do that and I don't feel stretched. If I had to travel a lot, I know I'd feel stretched.
I like how you also said, by the way, your daughter sounds so sweet. I have to just say that. She sounds like a sweetheart. And out of the mouths of babes, right? To say, yeah. But why?
No, I know.
Don't you love us? I love you more. It's like,
I know.
Oh, it's so sweet. But I wanted to say that one thing that you've said, and you said it more than once in our conversation today, was about service. Mm-hmm. You very rarely have you said the word sales. You've said the word service. You've said the word helping. You've said the words, being there to get the message out, to have your stories inspire others. So I think you've shared a ton of inspiration and you've given so much service today. So thank you for all that you've done. I want to give you the opportunity, though, because I'm sure you have something. This is the part where we call it the call to action. If you have something that you'd like to share with the audience today.
Yeah, so my husband and I developed a new program to help families buy their first income property or even expand it. Maybe you have 1 or 2, but you're not quite sure how you can build up that wealth. Join our free program right now for the month of June or July. I know this, I don't know when this airs. I'll still probably have a free group. I always say I'm just going to make a paid one, but I love to just give stuff for free. So it's the Legacy Wealth Builders, and we help you buy your first income property, but then keep the wealth. So you're building that wealth, and then how do you keep it? So we have friends that help you with tax strategy, and then we help you teach success and wealth principles to your kids. So it makes it fun. Like that story I told you of my daughter, like we teach you how you can bring those out in your kids and the kids can mastermind together. We really have hopes that the kids of the families that we bring together will develop their own masterminds and their own little businesses. And maybe they go in and want to buy their own properties, and just cultivate a community where families can come together that are like-minded. They can, talk, of course, about income properties. But that part of it, honestly, guys, I'm just going to be completely transparent here. You can go on YouTube and find so many amazing professionally done videos instead of my janky phone video where I teach you how to do it. I mean, I'm just being real. We have people, that are multimillionaires that are doing that, but that might inspire you. But what's going to get you across the finish line to buy that is the people around you. And it's not just me and my husband and my amazing daughters. Like, they're awesome. You want to meet them, but it's not just about us. It's about the other families and the other connections. And these are entrepreneurs. So you build relationships that could help your business. So that helps your income, because there's a difference between income and wealth. And we teach that. And we teach you wealth is more than just money. And we teach you to break those limiting beliefs of money so that literally you can not only obtain it, but keep it. And so that's our group. And keeplegacywealth.com is the website. You can also get another free resource there. If you're like, I'm not sure on the group, get our free resource. It's 5 things that we look for when we're buying an income property. So take that. If you do the step-by-step, you'll have a first income property by the end of the week. Like, it's really that simple. It's just how we can get you over the hump of those limiting beliefs that you can do it. And that takes a group. It doesn't just take a course. You need a group. You need eyeball to eyeball. We do free trainings there. You can come in with your dilemma, or if you have a house and you're like, I'm not sure, is this a good investment? My husband and I will coach you through it. We'll tell you, like, would we buy this or not, or what you look so you're cash flow positive, because that's the whole point. We want you to be cash flow positive.
Wow. Tabitha, you have given so much value today. Thank you. KeepLegacyWealth.com. We'll make sure that link and all of Tabitha's other links are in the show notes, where you can connect with her and learn more and even follow, be a part of her community, listen to her podcast. We'll make sure the links to the podcast are in there as well. Tabatha Thorell, before I let you go today to go hang out with your daughter.
Yeah. Daughters. I have 5.
Daughters, more than one, 5.
Yeah.
I'll give you the final thought.
So you asked me this, and one thing that we like to live by in our house is do it anyway. And life is hard. There's always going to be obstacles. Do it anyway. Whether you're talking investment, podcast, you're scared, do it anyway, because doing it is what breaks the fear. So just today, when you think, if you hesitate in your head, just hear my voice, do it anyway.
I love it. And that's a great place to leave it. Tabatha Thorell, thank you so much for being my guest today.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us today. Special thanks to our producer and production lead, Dom Carrillo, our music guru, Nathan Simon, and the person who works the arms, all of our arms actually, my trusty assistant, Stephanie Gafour. If you like what you heard today, leave us a comment and a review, and be sure to share it with your friends. If you don't like what you heard, please share it with your enemies. Oh, and if you have a suggestion of someone who you think would make an amazing guest on the show, let us know about it. Drop us an email, askcarl@carlspeaks.ca. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. You'll find all those links in the show notes. And if you're ready to take the plunge and join the over 3 million people who have said yes to podcasting, let's have a conversation. We'll show you the simplest way to get into the podcasting space, because after all, we're podcast solutions made simple. We'll catch you next time.